Hello, I am Dr. Rajshree Chatterjee, Associate Professor, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Jagannath University, Jaipur.
Hello everyone. Our today's topic is principles of media ethics. Here we are going to discuss four principles collectively, and then there are sub points which are associated with each principle. Let's start this topic. Ethical journalism strives to ensure the free exchange of information that is accurate, fair, and thorough. An ethical journalist acts with integrity. The very first principle is seek truth and report it. Ethical journalism should be accurate and fair. Journalists should be honest, courageous in gathering, reporting, and interpreting information. Journalists should take responsibility for the accuracy of their work, vary information before releasing it, use original sources whenever possible. A journalist should remember that neither speed nor format excuses inaccuracy. A journalist should always provide context, take special care not to misrepresent or oversimplify in promoting, previewing, or summarizing a story. He or she should always gather, update, and correct information throughout the life of a news story. A journalist should be cautious when making promises, but keep the promises they make. He should identify sources clearly. The public is entitled to as much information as possible to judge the reliability and motivations of sources. A journalist should also consider sources' motive before promising anonymity. Reserve anonymity for source who may face danger, retribution, or other harm and have information that cannot be obtained elsewhere. Explain why anonymity was granted. A journalist should diligently seek subject of news coverage to allow them to respond to criticism or allegations of wrongdoing. He should always avoid undercover or other surreptitious methods of gathering information unless traditional. Open methods will not yield information vital to the public. Be vigilant and courageous about holding those with power accountable. Also, give voice to the voiceless. A journalist should support the open and civil exchange of views, even the views are repugnant. He should recognize a special obligation to serve as watchdogs over public affairs and government. He should also seek to ensure that public business is conducted in the open and that public records are open to all. A journalist should provide access to source material when it is relevant and appropriate. A journalist should boldly tell the story of diversity and magnitude of the human experience. Seek sources whose voice we seldom hear. Avoid stereotyping. Journalists should examine the ways their values and experience may shape their reporting. Label advocacy and commentary. Never deliberately distort facts or context, including visual information. Clearly label illustrations and reenactments. Never plagiarize, always attribute. The second aspect is minimize harm. Ethical journalism treats sources, subjects, colleagues, and other members of the public as human beings deserving of respect. Journalists should balance the public needs for information against potential harm or discomfort. Pursuit of the news is not a license for arrogance or undue. Show compassion for those who may be affected by news coverage. Use heightened sensitivity when dealing with juveniles, victims of sex crimes, and other sources or subjects which are inexperienced or unable to give consent. Consider cultural differences in approach and treatment. A journalist should recognize that legal access to information differs from an ethical justification to publish or broadcast. A journalist should realize that private people have a greater right to control information about themselves than public figures and others who seek power, influence, or attention. Weigh the consequences of publishing or broadcasting personal information. He or she should always avoid pondering or lurid curiosity, even if others do. Balance a suspect's right to fair trial with the public's right to know. Consider the implications of identifying criminal suspects before they face large legal charges. Consider the long term implications of the extended reach, and permanence of publication, provided updated and more complete information as appropriate. Third point is act independently. The highest and primary obligation of ethical journalism is to serve the public. Always avoid conflicts of interest, real or perceived. Disclose unavoidable conflicts. A journalist should refuse gifts, favors, fees, free travel, and special treatment, and avoid political and other outside activities that may compromise integrity or impartiality of any damage credibility. A journalist should be wary of the sources offering information for favors or money. Do not pay for access to news. Identify content provided by outside sources, whether paid or not. A journalist should also deny treatment to advertisers, donors, or any other special treatment, and resist internal and external pressure to influence coverage. A journalist should distinguish news from advertising and shun hybrids that blur the lines between the two. Prominently label sponsored content. The last principle is be accountable and transparent. Ethical journalism means taking responsibility for one's work and explaining one's decision to the public. A journalist should explain ethical choices and processes to audiences. Encourage a civil dialogue with the public about journalistic practices, coverage, and news content. Respond quickly to questions about accuracy, clarity, and fairness. Acknowledge mistakes and correct them promptly and prominently. Explain corrections and clarifications carefully and clearly. A journalist should also expose unethical conduct in journalism, including within their organization. Abide by the same high standards they expect of others. So far, we have discussed 4 principles of media ethics. Now, let's take a quick look about the components of global media ethics so that you can understand that how we have designed the principles of media ethics that have been practiced in our country. The development of global journalism ethics has the following tasks. Here, we are going to discuss 3 tasks: conceptual task, research task, and practical task. The very first one is conceptual task. New philosophical foundations for a global ethics will include global reinterpretation in the ethical role and aims of journalism, global reinterpretation of existing journalism principles and standards, such as objectivity, balance, and independence, construction of new forms and best practices as guides for the practice of global journalism. The second part is research task. More research in the state of journalism amid globalization. Here, the studies of new media in various regions of the world. Studies on the revolution and impact of globalization in new media with a focus of ownership, technology, and practice. Studies on the ethical standards of new media in different countries. Studies on new coverage or international problems and issues. The last one is practical task. Application of this global perspective to redefine the coverage of international events and issues. Coalition building among journalists and interested parties with the aim of writing a global code of ethics. This has widespread acceptance. Initiatives to defend and enhance free and responsible news media, especially in the areas where problems are the greatest. Now, I would like to conclude by saying that the media ethics that we are trying to follow and the media ethics which have been followed by the media organization presently have a very deep impact from the global media ethics. So, we try to work on the practices, best practices and norms that have been guided by the practice of global journalism. It has been designed such way, although still there is lot of scope for improvement which is there. But a journalist who is working for any organization, it is the responsibility of a journalist to look after the democracy of the country and to maintain the democracy every journalist should always follow the bestest principle possible, although sometimes it may find difficult. But yes, nothing is impossible if it is true and presented in a factful manner. Thank you.